Hi, this is Sonia from B2I Healthcare. This is the first video of a series about working with mapping sets. In SNOWOWL, maps can be created as a map type reference set, which you would find here in the reference sets view, or as a mapping set, which are organized in this view. When you are defining a map, you are linking components from one terminology as the source to components with similar meaning from another terminology which would be called the map target. Both types, map type reference sets and mapping sets, are representing crosslinks between terminologies, and which option you choose depends on your requirements. Map type reference sets are a SNOMED CT standard mapping SNOMED as the source to a specified target terminology. There are simple maps like this one here that represent one-to-one relationships. So here we would have a SNOMED CT concept mapped to an ATC code. There's also complex maps like this one that also allow mapping from a SNOMED CT concept to multiple codes. Let's see if I can find an example in this map here. Here's one. You can see it's the same SNOMED CT code, which is mapped to two different map targets in ICD 10, and it's also possible to define map groups and map rules in complex maps. As a SNOMED CT standard, map type reference sets can be exported in a specific format, which is RF1 or RF2 format, but also as a text file with specific delimiter characters like tabs or commas that then can be used in Excel. Mapping sets are not constricted to SNOMED CT. This means they can be used to create crosslinks between two non-SNOMED CT terminologies, like this example here, which is a map between local codes and LOINC codes. Mapping sets also allow associating components from different terminologies. In this example, we can see SNOMED CT codes that are mapped to different target schemes, for example, ATC, ICD-10, LOINC, and a local code system, all in one mapping set, which would not be possible in a map type reference set where you are restricted to the target terminology that you specified. Mapping sets can be exported as Excel files, but not in RF1 or RF2 format. When you're working with mapping sets, it's useful to use this perspective here, which is the mapping set perspective. We also use this icon to identify mapping sets, so you can see that this globe here, these are all mapping sets. This is the icon for complex map type reference sets, and this is the one for simple maps, so you can see what kind of map it is. Mapping sets can be opened from the view by simply double-clicking on it, and this brings up the editor. We'll talk about this in a second. Just a few words about the view itself. You can see these are the mapping sets, and here I created some folders. This is optional, but it makes sense if you have a lot of mapping sets to organize them in folders. It's quite simple. You just click on this button and then let me create a sample folder, finish, and here is the new folder. And then you could either create a mapping set by right-clicking and selecting Add Mapping Set, or if you already have a mapping set, you just take it and simply drag it into the folder. Um, this view can be also linked to the editor. You already saw that it moved. So this means that if I activate an editor, I can also see where it would be in the view here. So you could see where it's located in which folder. Um, these folders can be collapsed with this button or expanded, or you can individually open them by clicking the triangles. It's also possible to filter, for example, for a mapping set. If you're looking for a mapping set, this also works for the name of the folders. You can create subfolders by right-clicking on a folder and then selecting Add New Folder. This is also where you would rename a folder or remove a folder. And to delete a mapping set, that's also here. Just right-click it and then you could delete it, or you could bookmark it, which would then show up in the bookmarks view. So if you have a mapping set that you use quite often, you might want to bookmark it and then bring it up here from the bookmarks view. So much about the view. Now let's take a closer look at the editor. I'm just going to double click the tab to maximize it. The information on the left side is related to the source. We can see the name of the source, which is in this case a local code system, the code ID, and the term. And on the right side, this is information about the target, which is SNOMED CT. You have the concept ID, and the preferred term is displayed here. If you're curious about one of the concepts, you can just double click it and this will open the editor with additional information. This also works for the source term, so I could click this one and open the editor for the local code. It's also possible to customize this editor. You can resize this. You can also move columns if you want to, and you can display additional information just by right-clicking on the top and bringing up the table preferences. And we disabled most of this information, so we just have the most basic information as a default, but you might want to display the status or the effective time, or map groups, map rules can be displayed as well. So let me just click OK. And if you change these, you need to close the editor and then bring it up again, and now we can see that all of these mappings are active. There's a button here that displays inactive mappings, so there are 2 inactive mappings in this mapping set. The properties of a mapping set are displayed on this tab: the name, definition, purpose, the version. It can be inactivated here, and there are some additional fields for comments or the source that can be entered. And the information can also be modified right here in this editor, only the version cannot be modified here. When you're searching for a mapping set, you can either use the filter, as I already showed, or you could also use the comprehensive quick search across all resources. Let's look for ICD 9, where you can see that there are different SNOMED CT concepts. There's a reference set, there's a LOINC code, and here is also a mapping set. And to open this, I just select and click it. This brings up the editor. And this is a pretty big mapping set with over 6,000 mappings. And if you have a mapping set this size, it makes sense to use the filter. Let's look, for example, for fracture, and there are 306 findings, and you see all of these have the term fracture in it. And if you want to clear the filter, just click this X. And since we changed table preferences, now I can also see which ones are active or inactive. If you're looking for a particular member, you can use another way of searching, which is the advanced search here. I customized this so that it just shows the mapping sets search, by the way. There are different criteria. You can search for name, purpose, version, status. You can also combine certain criteria. And the last two here are for members. So let's look for a member that has the term food. And we could further narrow this search by looking either just for the source or for the target or for both. And the results are down here in the search view. So you can't see the individual mappings, only the mapping sets that contain mappings with the search term. The first one is this that we already have up. So let's look for food. And there are 10 matches of source terms that contain the word food. And the other one would be occupations. And here we have just one, which is the food and services beverages manager. You could also combine two search terms by using an operator. So I could look for food and services. And you see now only this one mapping set came up because in the other one we don't have a term that has food and services at the same time. Okay, that's all I wanted to show about mapping sets for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and in the next video we will create a mapping set and map terms. Thanks for your attention. Bye-bye.